Heaven can't come soon enough. Jennifer, thank you. I have trust issues with technology. I pastored 3 of our universities, and I didn't use it a lot. People said, why don't you use technology? I have trust issues. So this is my PowerPoint. That's my thumb drive, and this is how I roll. I got enough problems. And Elder Carr, that was very nice of him. Really, the first word he thought of using was ugly. There was one more letter for him to give an introduction about me, but he knew I was big, so he left it with big. Good to be back in Washington. Saw some of the greatest, most amazing miracles take place. As a young pastor, Tacoma Central. Always good to be back. This sermon is entitled Gospel Eyes. Let's pray. Father in heaven, thy will be done through the power of the Holy Spirit. I pray this in the name of Jesus. Amen. I'd like you to turn with me to the Gospel of John, the 9th chapter. I'll share 2 verses there, but you'll want to hold that spot, because that's where we're going to be in this chapter. John chapter 9, beginning with verses 1 and 2. And Jesus passed by. He saw a man which was blind from his birth. And his disciples asked him, saying, Master, who did sin? This man or his parents? That he was born blind. You know, these disciples really need help. I mean, they need a miracle more than the blind man, don't they? Often we disciples need a miracle. We were alone. Toward the end, that was rare. The hospital room was usually crowded with family. Occasionally, a visit from a close friend that Dad had worked with through the years. But that afternoon, for a little bit, it was just Dad. The sounds of the medical machines marking, occasional beeps, the hums, and the constant flashing display of discouraging numbers. It was a hard time, but at least we were together. I witnessed many life and death struggles, so even to my untrained eyes, I could read those lines and the messages of those numbers. It's bad. You may not have him much longer. My lifelong hero, my pastor, preacher, my teacher, mentor, my dad, my friend. It's hard to talk about even now, 3 years. But I think it might be important for you to hear what he said to me in that last private conversation. As much as he was suffering, he was giving it his best. He fought cancer like he did everything, with everything he had, tenaciously. As I looked at the medical technology and then down at my father, he looked up at me and he asked in the midst of this, so, how are things going in the conference? Really? He was serious. I said, well, God brought me into a situation that was really hard, but it's been amazing that he brought us through. It has been absolutely miraculous. I found myself wishing the same thing for his fight with cancer. But it was not to be. It can be hard to understand when you're in those valleys praying with family. And the well-meant cliches from friends, that doesn't help. I said it's been amazing in Ohio, but it's very hard in the church right now, Dad. Harder than I've ever seen it. I shared with him, preacher to preacher, I mean, we've even pastored the same church, Southwestern, heart to heart. I never wanted to be a president. In fact, I ran for my calling to ministry because I knew, unlike some whose dads were pastors, I had no Pollyanna idea of ministry. I knew what it was like. So here I stand before you today, a preacher's kid that didn't want to be a preacher. The preacher was never going to be a president. I mean, what's next? Martyrdom? I'm not saying anything more. Have you ever noticed in your walk with God that sometimes He takes you to the place of your pain? I saw too much growing up at PK. And I knew lots of people because Dad's wasn't a small or quiet ministry. As a young person, I hated all of the hypocrisy that I saw in the church. I mean, people knowing all the right answers at Sabbath school questions, but some of the same people were meaner than skunks. You've been sprayed too. Things done in the name of Jesus that are so unlike Jesus. By the strict Pharisees of our time, finding religious ways of taking our Lord's name in vain by treating people who Jesus loved and died for like they're trash. There was a lot I could have said, but my dad was already going through enough. Besides, he knew what I was saying better than I did, for he had been in the fight a lot longer. But as bad as it ever got, my dad absolutely loved and trusted God, and he loved his church. At that moment, he looked up at me with clear eyes. In spite of the pain, he was looking at me, and I could see his mind working. You know how you know your family so well, and the looks on their face. And I could tell his heart was working hard. And what he said when he spoke, I knew that God was working and speaking through my father to me yet again. He looked up knowingly at me. Then he looked up around, as he often would do when he's searching for just the right words. I watched it countless times. He's shrugging off the serious pain. He's searching for those words, and then he said this: "They can't help themselves, son. They just don't have gospel eyes. They don't see it. They don't have gospel eyes." I looked at my dad. He had gospel eyes.
Amen.
He knew what grace was.
Yes.
He'd been saved by it. Saved from gangs to God. I mean, that was more than a title. That was his experience. He was never fooled by the self-righteous dribble, the sanctimonious talk that you could hear around church. I mean, he knew baloney when he heard it, and it was dangerous to share it because he'd call it out. And phony baloney, even more. He had gospel eyes. He had a way of seeing treasure in people, where many church people saw only trash. And that's one of the things I love most about him, and it is one of the things I miss. From time to time, from the time I was old enough even to remember, I watched him. He took me everywhere. I mean, I'm doing evangelistic meetings. I'm not even, he's helping me help out. I'm not even in school. I'm going on visits with him. I watched him, and I saw how he saw differently. He had gospel eyes. I'd watch him preach an evangelistic meeting, and then he could spot the need in the audience. And so he got done, and there was too much of a crowd to get to the young men that he needed to see. So I saw him race off the side. He went down that dark alley. It's in Greater New York. This one was in Greenwich Village, and he's jumping over ash can barrels, and you can hear him knocking them down too, to get to the front steps of the church to meet those gangbangers high on heroin that had floated into the meeting. So he could tell them that he was glad that they'd come, and he hoped they'd come again. He saw how priceless they were. As a kid, I remember how 4 of those gang members, high on heroin, were baptized, and 3 of them became ministers. Because Dad saw things differently. He had gospel eyes. Why else, when you have your wife pull the car up in front of Black Panther headquarters in Harlem, New York, in the late 60s, with your 2 little kids in the back seat, tell her to lock the door, stay behind the wheel, and if she had to leave, leave and pray. So he could go into Black Panther headquarters and have a Bible study with a weapons expert who happened to come to a meeting. I mean, what kind of preacher takes his lily white family to Black Panther headquarters in Harlem in the late 60s? My dad, that's who. I didn't know it then, but he was giving us kids life lessons on how to see differently. And now I know what it's called. Gospel eyes. How many of you have ever had your dad drive you and your mom to a house of prostitution so you could witness to a hooker? Those of you know my dad, you knew her as Goldie. God knew her as pure gold. And she gave her life to God right there in that place. I mean, Jesus can save people anywhere, any place, any time. He is that powerful, and the gospel is that priceless. Gospel eye. I remember more than once having to get out of my room. I'm in like a 2nd and 3rd grade because he's putting a heroin addict, helping him clean up. And the heroin addict would get cleaned up. My room, that was another story. Because he had gospel eye. When I lost my dad, I didn't just lose my dad. I lost the one who showed me how to see. There in that hospital room near the end, my dad was sharing what it was. The reason for his passionate, absolutely sold out for Jesus dedicated life. He looked up from that bed and he said to me, "Son, many of them even mean well. They just can't help themselves. They don't have gospel eyes." I thought a lot about what he said that day, and in conclusion I have come to this. Not only can't they help themselves, until they learn how to see differently, they can't truly help anyone else. That's been a problem for ever so long. Which brings us back to John chapter 9. Jesus passed by, he saw a blind man, which was blind from his birth. His disciples asked him, saying, "Master, who did sin? This man or his parents? He was born blind." You know, even his disciples didn't have gospel eyes at this point. Take a look at verses 5. You know, he tells them neither. He sees the need. He's not trying to, give out a list of sins. As long as I am in the world, I am God. I am titled the light of the world. When he had spoken, he spat on the ground and made clay with a spittle. And this was, as a kid, of all the healings, this one grossed me out the most. I I couldn't stand it. My mom, no hairspray, she'd spit. Or she, wet her fingers with her spit, and she'd put my hair down and Gotta go to church, pray for healing from the germs she put on my head. So when I read this, I'm like, what is he? I mean, he speaks, they can see. He can touch their eyes, leave them alone. He spits in the ground and then he's making mud pies. Anoints a man with mud pies. It wasn't until later that I had to take a lot of theology. I understood this. You see, those Pharisees and the others, they had made 38 categories of ways of breaking the seventh-day Sabbath. And they had lots of them. I mean, really interesting. If your house caught on fire, you could only go out in what you were wearing, so you hope you wore all 3 Sabbath suits that day. Unless, some pagan might come help put the fire out. You could have a hand with 3 ropes connected to donkeys, and if they're not touching, those ropes aren't touching each other, you haven't sinned. But if you close your hand, you've sinned, because that is like weaving, because the ropes are touching each other. And when you bend down on the Sabbath day and spit in the dirt, and you mixed up the clay, you had broken the category of kneading. He did it on purpose. So they're not mad that they only think about who sinned. They're not mad that this poor guy has suffered his whole life. They're mad about Jesus spitting in the dirt, making mud pies to heal him. And they call the Lord of the Sabbath a Sabbath breaker. Help me, Jesus, help them. It's too late. Look at verse 14. It was the Sabbath day when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. Then again the Pharisees also asked him how he had received his sight. He said unto them, He put clay on mine eyes, and washed, and I do see. Therefore, said some of the Pharisees, this man is not of God, because he keepeth not the what? Worst advertising for God that have ever been on earth were those who call themselves his children. Others said, how can a man that is a sinner do such miracles? There was division amongst them. Take a look at verses 39, 41. Jesus said, for judgment I am. There's the phrase again. Moses heard it early on. He's still claiming it. I am come unto this world that they which see not might see, and they which might be made blind, see may be made blind. You know what he said? Others, blind guides leading the. And some of the Pharisees which were with him heard these words and said unto him, are we blind also? Oh man, that's like when I played volleyball and someone set the ball or break above the net. It's spike time. Jesus said to them, if you were blind, you should have no sin. But now ye say, we see. Therefore your sin remaineth. And when the forgiver says the sin's still there, that's not good news. If you ask me, it's not the blind man who needed to receive sight. It was all those Pharisees, Sadducees, and Badducees. Badducees is a new one I've come up with. The Badducees in John chapter 9, including Jesus' 12 disciples, were Badducees that day. Every last one of them could have used some of that mud on their own eyes. Because Jesus can heal even spiritual blindness, but you have to be willing to let him touch you. Jesus was taking his disciples all over the place. I mean, saving people none of the church people thought were savable or wanted in the synagogue. For 3.5 years, he's taking his disciples everywhere trying to teach them what to look for and how to look for them. For 3.5 years, those disciples followed him all around Galilee, Judea, Samaria, you name it. One time they were getting out of a boat, walking on the land, and this demon-possessed guy came running at them with chains hanging from him. And the 12 disciples could tell that that guy hadn't studied his Sabbath school lesson that week. And they started running the other way. They looked at that man and they saw death running at them. But they were wrong, because they were blind. And Jesus didn't run because he could see.
Amen.
It wasn't death running toward them. It was a dead man that needed to come alive. They only saw the chains, they only heard the satanic screams, but Jesus could see chains broken. It's someone who would be the greatest witness to anyone who had ever known him than any other preacher ever could be. Jesus saw things differently. He saw people differently. Took his disciples to Samaria. That was unusual. Had to get them out of the way. Would you guys go get some food? In a Samaritan town. Knew a woman was coming that he needed to save, and if they were there, they'd only get in the way. You get this? How many people are kept out because the Pharisees or Pharisaical attitudes that get in the way? When the people called to give the good news are the ones that keep people from the good news, we need a healing. And there he was, man-made well, woman by the well, Samaritan woman. He's breaking all kinds of man-made rules because he saw her need, not just her sin. He didn't just see the many husbands, her current user. He saw her. He wasn't reading her resume. He was reading her need. He saw her. He had gospel eyes. He saw her, and that's why she saw him. Suddenly, she's this amazing witness to a town full of blind people who have yet to see the light. And she led them all back to see the light. Come see the man who told me everything I ever did. Better yet, come drink living water. Not just some scribe or Pharisee. He's a Jew who sees us Samaritans differently. I mean, can you imagine that? He's amazing. He has gospel eyes. No, he's the gospel that has eyes. For you. For me.
Amen.
Come on. This is our chance. This is our chance. That's what that Samaritan town thought. Well, maybe today is our chance.
Hallelujah.
I mean, what the world desperately needs is a church filled with gospel eyes. I mean, church, we could go on living without them. But when you live without gospel eyes and you grow in numbers, all you grow is an institution and not a church. And you won't have a Pentecost because if you don't have gospel eyes, you wouldn't be safe with it. I mean, we can have a highly organized group of people, and we can even call it church. You can have an amazing building, but without gospel eyes, you don't have amazing grace. And without amazing grace, all you have is some religious club. And without grace, you probably club people. Even if you never went clubbing in your whole life. Dance around that one. You think that Jesus will be impressed with that counterfeit? He said to people like that, you go all around the world, and when you backpack baptize him, you make him twice the devil of hell. Why? You didn't give him the gospel. You don't have gospel. Oh, that Jesus would heal our sight. So, I'm thinking about what my dad said, and I got to tell you, I got 2 little grandchildren. There are absolutely no perks to old age except grandkids. You know? You know how when we were young, we had kids? We said, man, I've learned so much more about the love of God since I've had kids. What did we know? I always wondered, when I had kids, what did you do with my parents, and where are they? Because my parents suddenly were different. Oh, the rules they had for me. Go ahead. Eat cake. What have you done with my parents? I didn't know till I became a grandfather. And now I finally understand love and grace. So I have a little Noah and a little Reese. Little Noah, he's in preschool. And they realized at school that he was they thought he had a sight problem. So my son and daughter-in-law took him to a doctor, and they had a checkup, and they said he needed glasses. Little Noah wasn't so sure about that, how he felt about glasses. He didn't think he wanted them. No matter how much his mom and dad said it would make a difference in his life, how much better he would see, how he could enjoy life more, didn't matter, didn't want them. But parents can be inventive. Actually, all of us that have been parents know that it's not really genius, it's desperation. I'd always heard that invention was, 10% inspiration, 90%? Yeah, you heard it too. I've come to a different conclusion. I believe invention is 10% inspiration and 90% desperation. So they were trying to think of a way to get him to have glasses. They had season passes at Disney, and this is what they said. When you get your glasses, when you wear them, the first thing we will do is go to Disneyland. Yeah, how's that sound? Sounds like bribery. But it works. So, they live in Glendale, California. I'm in Ohio. That's torture. I'm so thankful for FaceTime, you know. Still wish I could hug him. He came back, he had his glasses, and I FaceTimed him. And little Noah comes to the screen, and he's telling me all about it. And he said, Papa, there's a lot more treasure on the Pirates ride than I ever saw before. I didn't know there was so much treasure. It's everywhere.
Amen.
So what do we need? Well, church, we need Jesus to heal our eyes. We need what blind Bartimaeus needed in Luke chapter 18. We need a miracle. We need God to heal our sight. You know how in Luke 18 Jesus is going through Jericho again, and there's a crowd, always a crowd. And I mean, one time a little guy climbed up in a tree so he could see Jesus, probably the one they made this pulpit for, the Zacchaeus. I've gone all around the world to preach God's word, and I found that every pulpit was made for Zacchaeus. I mean, doesn't Goliath deserve a chance to convert? So he's going through Jericho, and there's a crowd, as always, and there's a blind beggar named Bartimaeus, and he hears that it's Jesus. Don't you love this? Jesus, Son of David, here's the title. Jesus, Messiah King, have mercy on me. I have never found a place in all of Scripture where someone cried to God for mercy that he doesn't give.
Amen.
That's good news. Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. It is helpful, disciples. Shush the man. Quiet down. God's too busy for you. What is wrong with us? We're sicker than the sick people. Did I say that? I said it. We're almost done. Feed your vigilance and contemplate what I said. Ellen White said that, if we were more loving, there'd be 100 where there's one. Don't you believe it? I've pastored all kinds of churches. You can do the same thing in every place, and you see totally different results. And you can say, oh, well, that was an easier place to work. Don't you tell me that. That'd be in the most secular place. Church grew like crazy. Not me, you can tell that already. Because the church was loving and kind. Imagine that. Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And they're trying to stop the man, and Jesus is always having to pull him off. Let the guy alone. Goes to the man. That's the gospel. Looks at him and says, what do you want from me? Jesus, Son of David, that I may receive my sight. So what is my closing prayer for us? Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on us. Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on us. Jesus, Son of David, what is it that you want? That you would give us your sight. And we pray it in your name, Jesus.
Amen. Awesome.